You're listening to Cosmic Cousins Soul-Centered Astrology for grounding your ass from all the new age sass. I am your host, Jeff Henshaw. Season 6 of Cosmic Cousins is a bi-monthly astrology offering released every new and full moon, dedicated to honoring the interconnectedness of our universal family through embodied health, self-discovery, and deeper learning. Hey, cousins. I'm sitting on my bed right now. I've got some frankincense burning. I've got my favorite book, Eastern Body, Western Mind, out by Anadea Judith. And all of this is happening right now. I'm getting spiritual because it is a Sagittarius full moon. Moon is in Tina Turner. Tina Turner, our queen of Sagittarius. So we're going to talk about her a little bit today. We're going to talk about the invitation of this Sagittarius full moon energy. And if you're not listening to this live, which today, I'm recording this Monday morning, June 17th, the full moon happened a few hours ago. So if you're not listening to this during the full moon, that's totally cool, because it's also going to be an opportunity for you to learn about this polarity between our conscious air, Gemini, and our super conscious fire, Sagittarius. Both mutable signs, fire and air, are complementary on opposite sides of the wheel, so they're teaching each other a lot, and they evolve through one another. So if you are a Gemini Sun, Moon, or Rising, or a Sagittarius Sun, Moon, Rising, or these placements or transits are really important to you right now, you'll benefit a lot from this episode. And so, yeah, I'm going to do announcements a little later on. I think we can just go ahead and start talking about it. So for me, I come from a love of tarot. So I've got all of my tarot cards out here that are connecting me to both Gemini and Sagittarius. And I'll share those cards with you. So mutable signs, I utilize the queens and the pages. So we've got the Queen of Swords and the Page of Swords for Gemini. And then we have the Queen of Wands and the Page of Wands for Sagittarius. So you can just start by looking at those four cards and seeing the polarity between these energies and what conversations they might have with one another. But to deepen it a little bit more, we have the ruling planet card. So Gemini's ruling planet is Mercury, so we have the Magician out here. Sagittarius's ruling planet is the Wheel of Fortune, or the ruling planet is Jupiter, so we have the Wheel of Fortune card out here. And then what I like to call as the soul growth card, for Gemini it's the Lovers, and for Sagittarius, it's Temperance. And so what we'll see with these two cards is they both have angels present on them, on their cards. So we'll talk about the importance of angels and spirit with this polarity. We're already sensing into that just by seeing these images out. And so really, it's through the help of Sagittarius that Gemini learns to drop out of their head and into their heart. Right? I know for me in my own life, this Gemini season has, for one, felt like forever. There's been so much that has happened, so much movement, so many new thoughts and ideas coming through, so many opportunities to communicate my truth. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, right? Even though it's something that I do on this podcast often, I'm doing it in a very Aquarian way, which is that fixed air. I'm talking to you about something that's fixed. Here we're talking about a theory that is astrology, right? That connects us to our universal consciousness. Aquarius is super conscious air, and it's fixed. This Gemini energy, it's personal, it's conscious, and it's mutable, it's changeable, it's adaptable. And so it's with the help of Sagittarius that Gemini learns to drop out of this air element and into the element of fire. So dropping out of the head into the heart, we could say. So a lot of ideas with Gemini. Gemini, as our conscious air sign, has the enormous capacity to reach out and touch the world with the gift of their words. So we can even think Gemini rules over the hands, so actually reaching out. But you can also think with your hands, you can only grab that which is in your immediate surrounding. Gemini is connected to that in our immediate surroundings. So we're reaching out, we're touching the world. It's through the gift of words, intellect, and the ability to perceive duality around us. So intellect and words, this is air element. And then Gemini has this energy of the twins, the duality around us, perceiving dark and light. So Gemini communicates air, the light in the dark, right? This is with the ethereal nature of the Page of Swords. So you can take a look at the Page of Swords. And also communicates about the dark and the light with the piercing truth of the Queen of Swords. So we have this shape-shifting between light and dark. So it's telling us the truth, that which might go missed, bringing it to the forefronts of our minds. This is the power of Gemini. And so for Gemini, if it becomes too Gemini, this can start overthinking things, over-communicating things, telling the truth when it's not actually for higher benefit of all those involved. Can get very scattered. So for the Gemini listening, or if this is you during Gemini season, we evolve by balancing that out with the polar sign of Sagittarius. So to evolve through Sagittarius, which is what we are doing during this full moon transit, Gemini, again, learns to drop out of the head and to bring those thoughts into action, fire, with optimism, with hope, with faith, with gratitude. So Gemini is connected to the immediate surroundings, right? It's what's in your backyard. It's your neighborhood. It's your local farmer's market. It's poets' cafes. It's anything that when you walk out in your streets, what you perceive. So it's the butterflies in your neighborhood. It's the dogs on a walk. It's all of that. This is the Gemini territory. Sagittarius is connecting us to world travel. It's cultural expanse. We could even say Sagittarius is connecting us to other cities in the country that you live in. But it is something in which it's long-term travel, right? So while Gemini is connected to communication, and really Sagittarius and Gemini are both connected to communication because Sagittarius evolves through Gemini, right? So Gemini is connected to your local magazine, having so much information about the happenings around you, right? This is like zines. This is like brochures. Sagittarius is connected to world news. It's connected to religion, philosophy. It's connecting us to the world at large. And what's interesting here, for one, in my own life, I've been very much in my immediate surroundings because I'm writing a book right now. Very much in my communication, very much in my intellect, my thoughts. On this full moon, yesterday, I had the opportunity to go and hug Amma, the hugging saint. And Amma was our runner-up for Queen of Libra, which is cool because I'm writing a book about Aries. So I'm feeling into the polarity of Aries by going to see Amma, but I'm also feeling into this polarity of Gemini in my thoughts by going and doing something that is connecting me to the world at large. And so Amma travels the world hugging millions of people every year. And by the way, if you want a little tip for going to hug Amma, I went last night around 9:30 and I only had to wait for like 30 minutes. If you go during the day, you have to wait for a few hours. That's always been my little trick. And I'm just a night owl anyway. It feels nice to go at nighttime. Another thing I'd like to reflect with this Gemini-Sagittarius polarity, it's interesting. Because of this capacity for Gemini to evolve through Sag and Sag to evolve through Gemini, a lot of the Geminis I know are connected to world travel, which is upgrading us from what traditional astrology might tell us. For instance, my partner is a Gemini Moon, Gemini Rising, and is a travel writer. Was in Prague last week, was in Italy the week before, and left this morning to go off on a 2-week trip. So there is something with Geminis being connected to world travel and philosophy when they allow themselves to evolve, right? Sagittarius, on the other hand, a lot of Sagittarius I know, I'm thinking of my friend Andy in Asheville, has started a radical marching band in Asheville, North Carolina. So there is this sense of Sagittarius now being connected to the neighborhood, even though he's lived in Thailand and has the spirit of a Sag. He's very much connected to his immediate surroundings. So the thing is really get to know your polar sign, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to express that part of yourself as well. So the phrase for Gemini is I think or I communicate. And the phrase for Sagittarius is I perceive or I explore. So here, for Gemini, we go from communicating about duality to perceiving the dualities of this nature. Do you feel the difference here? What we're doing is we're keeping the core mission of Gemini, which is about duality, dark and light, but we're changing the phrase, we're upgrading it to its polar sign. So communicating about duality to perceiving duality. Or we could say Gemini is here for truth, thinking about truth to exploring truth. So in some capacity, the Sagittarius full moon and the polarity of this time of year is asking us to get out of our heads and bring our thoughts and the dual parts of ourselves into loving practice, to explore them, to perceive them. So this Sagittarius energy says to Gemini, and I actually do this by I'm looking at the Queen of Wands next to the Queen of Swords. What would this look like? Because since it's the full moon, the full moon gets to talk to the sun here. And the Queen of Wands is, if you don't have, I use the Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial. What we see here, the Queen of Wands is a very, I think, debonair or handsome woman who is wearing yellow, and she is sitting very relaxed, but also looks very in her body. And she's looking out to the horizon, and she's got a sunflower and a black cat, and her throne has two lions that are dancing on it. Queen of Swords, on the other hand, as we see her profile, she's not looking towards us. She's looking off in the distance, and she's got a sword up that's pointing straight up to the heavens, and she looks stern, and she's got one hand that is sort of proclaiming something. And then there's clouds, and even the trees in the background kind of look a little hazy. And then there's one bird in the sky. So what I'm seeing here, Queen of Wands says to Queen of Swords, hey, life isn't so serious, actually. Our life doesn't have to be so logical. You're overthinking it. There's a wide world of possibilities out there for you. So I encourage you to notice, what do these energies want to say to each other? And so the thing is when I think about these queens for me in the tarot are really about this internal energy. How do you connect to the element within yourself? Going deeper within. And when we look to the soul growth cards for this polarity, we have the Lover's card for Gemini and the Temperance card for Sagittarius. And as I was saying before, both of these cards depict angels on them. So my biggest takeaway over the past few days, illuminated by the light of this full moon, is how might I bring it back to my spiritual practice at this time? So Gemini, right, it's firing off with all of these ideas, maybe even mental dramas. Sagittarius is wanting to aim bigger, right? The archer shooting for that high vision. But all of this expansion in this very mutable Gemini-Sagittarius energy is coming from within. Both Gemini and Sagittarius, with our air-fire mutability, really benefits from a spiritual practice, really benefits from a connection with a higher power. So I think this is nice. We can take a moment to pause and reflect on who last year we crowned our Queen of Gemini and Queen of Sagittarius. So let's take a moment. So our Queen of Gemini is Stevie Nicks.
Can the child within my heart rise above?
And you can hear the wisdom in her voice right there, but Stevie Nicks is both angelic and witchy. She exudes this lightness within shadows. She expresses dark parts of her soul in an airy and uplifting way. She's in control, but also wild and free, spinning in circles. So Queen of Gemini is Stevie Nicks. And then we have our Queen of Sagittarius, which is Tina Turner. So Tina was named Queen of Sag, and you can probably hear it there because of her connection to world religion, her connection to Buddhist chant. She also has the fierce focus and fiery optimism that uplifts humanity towards universal truth, an open-minded approach, very faithful, very expansive. Sagittarius rules over the thighs too, so we got that. But so thinking about these two women helps to allow us to give a little bit more of a directed focus when we're thinking about these energies of Gemini and Sagittarius. And that was the intention of doing the Queen of the Zodiac series, is so that we could put a face to a name, right? So I posted on the Instagram a picture of Stevie Nicks and Tina Turner next to each other. And I asked the question, I said, what do you feel unites our Gemini-Sagittarius polarity? Here's some of our responses that we got. Miranda Harp said electricity as fire and air. We have walking as a means for exploring, either in a local neighborhood or a distant one. That's from Cordelia Philia. There's something raw about Sagittarius, and I'm always naturally attracted to wildfire, says May Sun River Black. We also have Gemini's ideas, Sagittarius's ideals, and that's from And Nothing Hurt. So a lot of other people said both of these people are open-minded and up for fun. There's a lot of exploration to the identities of the different parts of themselves. And so we feel that with these two women, to be sure. But I want to take it a little bit deeper and say the importance of a spiritual practice. And that's what we were just saying. That's what's been coming to me this time of year. So Gemini, right? Gemini and Sagittarius both have this love for truth. And it comes in different ways. Gemini, it's through communication. Sagittarius, it's through exploration. But as the two evolve through each other, they learn to do both, right? And so Stevie Nicks, Queen of Gemini, Tina Turner, Queen of Sagittarius, both have experienced incredible obstacles in their lives. Both of them actually hit rock bottom, and I'm seeing the Wheel of Fortune card out here in our spread because Wheel of Fortune is the Jupiter card in the tarot. And so there's these ups and downs that we might feel in this Gemini and Sagittarius energy. And so Stevie Nicks hit rock bottom with her addiction. Tina Turner hit rock bottom in an abusive relationship. But both of these women rose back up on top through a spiritual practice. So Stevie Nicks became sober and gained control of her life through AA. And she's also talked about in interviews her spiritual practice with magic, with fairies, and she also holds a belief in past lives. Tina Turner calls herself a Buddhist Baptist, and this is alluding to her upbringing in the Buddhist church and her later conversion to Buddhism. And she healed her life through the power of chant, specifically with the chant Nam Myo Renge Kyo. And so I'll break down this a little bit. The AA practice for Stevie Nicks, Gemini, is the neighborhood. We go to AA in our neighborhood, right? Gemini. And it's also a very air element way of healing. It's communicative, it's relational, and it's also maybe a bit more practical or logical than other practices. And so all of that gives us that Queen of Swords side of Gemini for sure. With the communicative, relational, logical. But then Stevie's spiritual practices are also ethereal in nature, which feels like the Page of Swords. right? It's magical, it's fairies, it's connected to past lives. So Gemini is holding all of that, and that's the mutable energy, is the ability to go into the Queen and the Page energy. But we feel that is very air. And then on the other hand, Tina Turner, Sagittarius, is a Buddhist Baptist, right? Sagittarius' sole mission is to literally bridge religions of the world. And here we see Tina doing that. And then her practice with chanting feels much more fiery in nature, and it's connecting us to the world at large. So both of these signs, Gemini and Sagittarius, benefit from connecting to their internal world through a spiritual practice. So the expansion and the high vision for this full moon isn't so much about where are you going, where are you aiming your arrow, and not even how are you getting there, but are you connecting with a higher power at this time? Are you connecting with fairies and angels if you fall more on the Gemini side of things? Are you connecting to God and Source through philosophy or chant if you fall more on the Sagittarius side of things? So my wish for you on this very charged Sagittarius full moon here at the end of Gemini season, right before we go into our eclipse season, is that you give your mind and aspirations a rest and release the need to know and expand your communication with spirit. Because once we expand the horizons of our connection with spirit, with Source, with a spiritual practice, our world will naturally expand to the vision of our soul's longing. And so there's a lot of rest here in this energy, a lot of faith and trust. And so you can take a moment to just connect to the parts of the body that Sagittarius and Gemini rule over. And so Gemini is connected to the hands. And so you can even shake out any excessive thoughts that you have in your hands. And then the thighs of the archer. Sagittarius is the thighs, the hamstrings, the IT band. Connecting to this part of your body, it's our legs, our thighs that get us around the world, get us moving. So you can even shake out any excess energy you might have in your legs. But if you sit in meditation, in a traditional meditation posture, while meditating on Gemini's and Sagittarius as part of the body, what you'll find is how instrumental the hands and the thighs are to the meditation practice. So I invite you, if you are sitting right now, notice how it's your thighs that create the base for your meditation posture. Notice that juxtaposition of the legs taking you around the world, but also the legs giving you a base for your spiritual practice. And then bring the awareness to your hands. You can breathe into the hands. Gemini. And you know, because you've been meditating, that if your hands are fidgeting, so is your mind. And so the invitation in meditation is, how can you bring your hands to a particular mudra and connect to that mudra, commit to it? And so for me, right now, I have my palms face up with the thumb and pointer finger touching. And so breathing into the hands, I notice how the hands are a direct connection to my mind. And so if I can still my hands, I can still my mind. And so the hands and the thighs become so important in our meditation practice, and I think it's such a beautiful reflection of the importance of Gemini and Sagittarius to have a meditation practice, to have a connection with prayer, with spirit. And so planting any seeds of intention that are arising to you, and we'll take a deep breath in together. Thanks for being here. As always, Cosmic Cousins, we have an exciting episode for you today. We're going to look at Alanis Morissette's birth chart. And then we have the incredible astrologer Debra Silverman on the show today, who is a Gemini, but also has Saturn in Sagittarius. So we're going to be talking about that polarity in our conversation. And we cover so many other topics in our conversation, including the personality side of Gemini. We talk about high vibe Gemini, Venus in Gemini, what is a Mars return, using stars and cards, morning rituals, and we also get a Pluto and Leo apology to the Millennials. So you want to stick around for that. But before we get into all of that, I do have some announcements. As always, there's a Patreon for the show. So if you're a regular listener and you'd like to contribute monthly, you could leave $1, $2, $5, $20. You could commit to that reoccurring price so that I could continue to bring this offering to you free of charge. And we have one new Patreon supporter this week, Kelsey Langell. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for your support to the show. If you'd like to sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/Cosmic Cousins. And astrologycousins.com if you're interested in booking a reading or a mentorship with me. I offer tarot and astrology mentorships. The 12-week summer course for Cosmic Cousins is well underway. We met last week for our Aries gathering. Tonight we meet for our Taurus gathering, and we've got an awesome group of 8, and I'm excited to continue with that. What other announcements do I have? Oh, yeah. If you're interested in looking at the tarot cards that I talked about for this episode, you can sign up for the newsletter. And there's a link on the website to that. And I'll also put a link in the show notes if you'd like to sign up for the newsletter. And I'll send one out every week that tells you when a new episode is released. Also, leave some reviews for this podcast. If you're enjoying it, you could leave a 5-star review and some comments and love. Would love to hear from you. Haven't gotten any reviews in a while, so that would be nice to hear from you. And I think that's all the announcements I have for us today. So at this time, we're going to transition into looking at Alanis Morissette's life. So here on Cosmic Cousins, most always we'll look at someone famous's birth chart and talk about their life and offering and how they are an expression of their sun sign, their moon sign, their rising sign, all of it. So, of course, Alanis Morissette is a Gemini Sun. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we looked at Jules' birth chart, and so we've got both of these kind of like folky, I want to say like channels of truth. Both of these women, Jewel and Alanis Morissette, have this ability to communicate darkness within light and light within darkness, giving us that Gemini feel. And so Gemini Sun, Alanis Morissette, right? Okay, so was born June 1st, 1974, is a Canadian-American singer-songwriter, record producer, and actress, and is known for her emotive mezzo-soprano voice. And she began her career in Canada in the early 1990s with 2 mildly successful dance pop albums. But after the dance pop albums, she released Jagged Little Pill in 1995, and it was much more rock-oriented album, and it sold more than 33 million copies globally and is her most critically acclaimed work. And so let's talk a little bit about some of these songs on this first album. So I'd like to start with Hand in My Pocket, because we know Gemini rules over the hands. And what's so cool about this song is showing the dual nature of Gemini. I'd like to read some of the lyrics to you. Okay, here we go. I pulled them up. So we got, I'm broke, but I'm happy. I'm poor, but I'm kind. I'm short, but I'm healthy. Yeah. Okay, so already we're seeing the duality here of Gemini, right? I'm broke, but I'm happy. So there's a sense of perceiving duality in reality. I'm high, but I'm grounded. I'm sane, but I'm overwhelmed. I'm lost, but I'm hopeful, baby. Is this how y'all been feeling over Gemini season? Because to be sure, this is how I've been feeling. I'm lost, but I'm hopeful. It's funny because, and as we're in this polarity of Gemini-Sagittarius, this time last year is when the Inner-Dorothy personal myth got inspired because of Judy Garland. I look at Judy Garland's life and realize that her life was a direct reflection, and her birth chart was a direct reflection of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. So Judy Garland's a Gemini Sun, and I said a lost little girl in a far-off land. So lost little girl's Gemini Sun in a far-off land, Sagittarius Moon, finding her way back home as a Cancer rising, right? And so that's when I started coming up with the Inner-Dorothy for everyone. But I'd since upgraded the like lower vibe traits, like a lost little girl Gemini, to the higher vibe, like a curious little girl in a far-off land. Felt nicer to me. So, but Alanis says it here, I'm lost, but I'm hopeful. And I think of hopeful as Sagittarius. There's a lot of this like polarity between Gemini and Sagittarius that she's bringing up, but also the duality of her own nature. What it all comes down to is that everything's going to be fine. Because I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one's giving a high five. And so I love that because I sense in with Gemini that there's this darker, serious side to Gemini, more contemplative, more intellectual, and that's the hand in the pocket. And then there's this other side to Gemini, which is playful and ethereal and is interested in communication and socialization. I feel drunk, but I'm sober. I'm young and I'm underpaid. I'm tired, but I'm working, yeah. I care, but I'm restless. I'm here, but I'm really gone. I'm wrong and I'm sorry, baby. I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one's flicking a cigarette. So the song continues on and on. I could read the whole thing to you, but I think maybe you could just go back and listen to it at some point, and continue to feel into the duality. If you have a Gemini playlist, to be sure, put this one on there. And so let's listen to a little clip of it for research purposes so we can feel into this dual nature of Gemini.
I'm high, but I'm grounded. I'm sane, but I'm overwhelmed. I'm lost, but I'm hopeful, baby. And what it all comes down to.
And so that song is really cool because the way that she does it, it's a poetry technique that's called rhyme juxtaposition. And so its primary lyrical structure is exemplified by this offset coupling of the first and second stanzas of each chorus. So there is this, like, I don't know if that's conscious or not, but in the first chorus, for example, Alanis says fine, 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 and it's coupled with a high five, when it should, according to traditional rhyme schemes, be instead set against the peace sign, because it's fine and peace sign. But then peace sign closes the third line, and which in turn is coupled with the first line ending with the phrase a cigarette, which is a clear rhyme with the end of the second chorus, which is out just yet. So there is also this kind of wordplay and this like shifting. So it makes it fun to listen to. And it feels like that mutable air energy. And Alanis continues this with a lot of her work. And the song Ironic, this is considered one of Morissette's signature tunes. And it was nominated for 2 Grammy Awards in 1997. Which, by the way, her first album in 1996, she won 4 Grammy Awards. She got Best Female Rock Vocal Performance, Best Rock Song, Best Rock Album, and Album of the Year. So anyway, Ironic, the song is considered one of her most signature tunes. And I'll read some of the lyrics to you and we'll talk about its connection to Gemini. Okay, so an old man turned 98. He won the lottery and died the next day. Damn, okay. An old man turned 98. He won the lottery and died the next day. So there's already this sense of light and dark, right? Winning the lottery and then dying the next day. It's a black fly in your Chardonnay. It's a death road pardon 2 minutes too late. Isn't it ironic? don't you think? And I actually remember having I think I was in 8th grade, and I had a grammar queen English teacher, and she did not like the song because she's like, this is not actually technically irony. This is just tragedy. But I think I felt into what Alanis was communicating with irony here because as far as I know, from a literary perspective, irony is when the audience is aware of an outcome that the character is not aware of. And in some ways, you can even think of it as God having like this sense of humor, it feels like to me, of like knowing the outcome. And we as an audience, in some ways, are gifted with the expansive perspective, the objective perspective of knowing how these stories are going to play out. But I guess it's technically not irony. But she goes on, the whole song's called Ironic. It's like rain on your wedding day. It's a free ride when you've already paid. It's the good advice that you just don't take. And so some of this might actually feel very Gemini, and even Sagittarius could probably connect to this too. But I know some of my Gemini friends give really good advice, but they don't necessarily take it themselves. Mr. Play It Safe was afraid to fly. He packed a suitcase and kissed his kids goodbye. He waited his whole damn life to take that flight, and as the plane crashed down, he thought, well, isn't this nice? So yeah, she says life has a funny way of sneaking up on you when you think everything's okay and everything's going right. And life has a funny way of helping you out when you think everything's gone wrong and everything blows up in your face. I think that line really speaks to my experience of Gemini season, is that there's been this, it's like, oh, I'm getting signed by a publishing agency, but then this thing happens financially. And so there's like sort of this like Wheel of Fortune balance that's going on for me over this season, which is interesting. So yeah, there's just like this playfulness between the light and dark, again, that we feel with this song. We see it in a lot of her songs. Let's listen to a little clip of this for research purposes and see how it speaks to you of Gemini and what you've experienced over this season.
When you're already late, a no smoking sign on your cigarette break. It's like 10,000 spoons when all you need is a knife. It's meeting the man of my dreams and then meeting his beautiful wife. And isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Okay, and so let's look a little bit to Alanis's birth chart here. Cool thing here, and partly the reason why we're looking at her chart today is that her moon is in Scorpio, which is a sign that comes right before Sagittarius. So we're feeling into this other side of the wheel here. And the Scorpio moon really, it works so well with Gemini energy to me. Gemini, right, is this cosmic dance between light and dark, whereas Scorpio is going into the darkness, into the subconscious, into the murk, and transforming it into light, into healing. This is why Scorpio is connected to psychotherapy work, because we're going into the subconscious and bringing it up into consciousness. It's also why it's connected to practices that are esoteric in nature, like tarot, because it's doing the similar thing. And so here we have a curious little girl, Gemini Sun, who's in the shadowy darkness of night, Scorpio Moon. And so we get this even deeper connection to this transformation process. And we also feel this. The first song that Alanis released was You Ought to Know. And this was the song that got her Best Female Rock Vocal Performance and Best Rock Song of the Year in 1996, You Ought to Know. And so I'll read some of those lyrics to you now. So let me pull them up. Okay, so it starts off, it says, I want you to know that I'm happy for you. So she's talking to an ex-lover. I wish nothing but the best for you both. So we start off really light. An older version of me, is she perverted like me? Would she go down on you in a theater? Does she speak eloquently, and would she have your baby? I'm sure she'd make a really excellent mother. Because the love that you gave me that we made wasn't able to make it enough for you. So already I'm like getting tied over my tongue here in this like very wordplay Gemini way, and we're going into these deep emotions here. And so there's a lot of rage in this song, which we can connect to Scorpio fixed water energy. There's a lot of like holding on to the past. There's a lot of reflection and sexual energy that we feel very present in here, which is all connecting us to Scorpio. And it's almost like through this process of communicating in this very wordplay kind of dualistic nature way that we are able to transform this darkness into light by also dancing with the dark and the light. And so it's such a cool energy. And I feel like we've talked about this before on the show, but both Gemini and Scorpio are the two signs in the astrological wheel that I think, especially in meme town on Instagram, get poked fun at a lot and people are maybe a little wary of or scared of. And that is because there is this connection to light and dark that's going on with these two signs. And thank Goddess for it. I mean, thank you, Alanis, for putting this kind of work out, because you're communicating Gemini to parts of our souls, Scorpio. And so the thing is that's interesting about these two signs is that Scorpio likes to have secrets. It's why it's connected to esoteric practices. It's why it's connected to psychotherapy, because you go to your therapist and you can tell them anything and they're going to hold on to that secret for you. And it's not so much a secret as it is just holding space fixed for your emotions, water. But then we have this beautiful connection here with Alanis that has this ability to then tell your secrets, right? Gemini is not about keeping secrets. It's about telling the truth. And so Scorpio is containing the darkness to bring it into light. And then Gemini is clearing out the darkness or perceiving darkness and bringing darkness together in a marriage with light, to bring us grays of duality, which is the truth. So let's listen to a little clip of this and see how you can feel this Gemini and Scorpio energy coming together. Gemini Sun, the light that we're shining out to the world, is through our words. Scorpio Moon is what we're motivated by on the inside. It represents our wild and primal emotions, our desires. It is the nighttime shadow realm, right?
'Cause the love that you gave that we made wasn't able to make it enough for you to be open wide. No. And every time you speak her name, does she know how you told me it won't be till you died? Till you died, but you're still alive. And I'm here to remind you of the mess you.
And we even feel Alanis bringing in the theme of death there with Scorpio. To be sure, we'll be putting Alanis in our Queen of Scorpio Moon bracket whenever we do the Moon Queens series. We have that to look forward to. Later in 1996, Morissette embarked on an 18-month world tour in support of Jagged Little Pill, beginning in small clubs and ending in large venues. This tour went on, it was 18 months, which I just said, and it ended up being a very stressful tour for Alanis. And she started practicing Iyengar yoga for balancing and for internal peace. And so here is Gemini evolving through its polar sign of Sagittarius, a practice that is connecting it to some other culture. And so she headed to India for 6 weeks, world travel, Sagittarius, and she went with her mother and her 2 aunts and her 2 friends. And so what is Alanis up to today? I was curious too, because I haven't really been hearing too much from her, but she is in the works of releasing an album right now. If you follow her on social media, you'll see that she's been talking about new songs that she's been writing, and it was just announced this month, actually, that she went into recording, and she's scheduled to have a new album released in 2020. And you can also catch her with some of her other work, which is very Gemini high vibe. It's called Conversations with Alanis Morissette, and this is a podcast. She has a monthly podcast that's available to download on iTunes, and it's free to listen on YouTube. And so this features conversations with different individuals from different schools and walks of life, discussing everything from psychology to art to spirituality to design, health and well-being to relationships, whether they be romantic or parent-children relationships. So it is, to be sure, a Gemini evolving through Sagittarius kind of offering. It's about conversations and spirituality. And so I'm going to check that out. I haven't actually listened to an episode yet, but I did listen to the intro to it. And so I'll drop the intro to Alanis's podcast here. And yeah, go check it out.
Hi, I'm Alanis Morissette. Welcome to my podcast. It is my joy today to welcome today's guest, Dr. Peter Levine. Dr. Peter Levine received his PhD in medical biophysics from the University of California in Berkeley and holds a doctorate in psychology from International University. He's worked in the field of stress and trauma for over 40 years and is the developer of somatic experiencing.
So right there, which by the way, I'm super stoked to listen to this podcast, and I can't believe I'm just learning about it now, which is why it's cool for me to be researching these people each week, because I learned so much. And so, one, it's just such an honor to be here and to be on this journey with you. But two, we see there Gemini evolving through Sagittarius. Sagittarius is connected to higher learning, and she's interviewing this professor who's done somatic research. So we're getting that high vibe Gemini feel there, where Gemini is taking their thoughts, their ideas, and their ability to communicate and channeling in a way that is having some sort of form for the communication to travel. And so that's how we upgrade from the gossip of Gemini to Gemini being a communicator of divine truth. It's beautiful. And so looking at Alanis's chart, we've got just the sun in Gemini. There's no other planets in Gemini, but there is a stellium in Cancer, getting us a little bit more of that emotional realm. Mercury, Jupiter, and Mars all in Cancer. And then a Leo rising. So Alanis Morissette is a curious little girl, Gemini Sun, and the shadowy darkness of night, Scorpio Moon, entertaining us all with her warmth, Leo rising. And to be sure, that's exactly what she's done through her life and work. I didn't even get to it, but it's coming to me now in the song Ironic, the music video. There's actually not one, not two, but there's 4 of her in the car, all interacting with each other. And that's one of my favorite music videos from being a child watching MTV and VH1, which kind of brings me into this next part of the show with Debra Silverman, who we have on the show today. And in our conversation, I asked her about the dual nature of Gemini, and she was like, it's not a dual nature. We have 1,000 sides to ourselves, and we feel that in Alanis's music video with the 4 different versions of herself in the car singing to each other. And so at this time, we're going to transition into our last part of this episode, where we get to sit down with the incredible astrologer, Debra Silverman. When Debra Silverman was just 20 years old, she met an astrologer who blew her mind and changed her world forever. She had officially been introduced to the world of astrology. It was then that she realized that the stars in her own world had aligned just right, and she had found her life's purpose. Debra went on to deeply study the body and mind, earning a bachelor's degree in psychology and dance from York University and a master's degree in clinical psychology. Over the past 40 years of professional experience and private practice, she has specialized in helping thousands of individuals achieve emotional health and wisdom based on their unique personality and the 4 elements: water, air, earth, and fire. Her work with families, individuals, and couples has her standing out in a sea of therapists and coaches. And while there is no one-size-fits-all approach, Debra has developed a unique psychological spiritual model, combining her expertise in esoteric soul-centered astrology with her extensive education in psychology to help those going through major life changes, especially in crisis. She custom designs her therapeutic approach to each individual using astrology and psychology as a magical healing combination. What makes Debra different is not only her honest and direct style, but her fun and non-traditional way that she breathes new life into this ancient practice, which is also Gemini high vibe. Her goal is to connect with you on a deeper level and to help you heal while making you laugh and accepting you just as you are. She shares her knowledge through her own radio show called Tell Me a Story, which airs each Tuesday online, and by writing columns for various magazines. She has also taught at the internationally renowned Esalen Institute, and her work has taken her around the globe practicing and lecturing in places like New York, Los Angeles, London, Vancouver, Seattle, and Boulder, Colorado, where she now lives. And so I'll put a link to her show notes. In the show notes, I'll put a link to her website and also to her radio show. So at this time, enjoy this conversation with Debra Silverman. I'd like to start with you with the part of the body that Gemini rules over, which is the hands. And I'm just curious, what is your connection as a Gemini to this part of your body?
Well, that's definitely true. I talk with my hands. I watch myself on my videos and I'm like, oh my God, someone tell her to tame that thing. It's a very classical Gemini trait to use the hands when they speak. And I am aware that it is part of my nature and it's something I can't do much about. I mean, it's instinctual.
Your videos are next level. They're so inviting and heartwarming. And I know many of the people that listen to this podcast are huge fans of you. I had one person write in, Holly Ramey, who is an Aries, who got a reading from you about 10 years ago and is super excited that you're on the podcast. And so I have a list of questions that have been sent in from people that I'm excited to share with you today. We'll get into those in a moment, but I just wanted to start by saying that a lot of people have been following your work for some time. So you've been an astrologer for how long? When did your astrology journey start?
42 years ago. Honestly, I came in, I often say that if I was a child pianist, I would have been one of prodigy. I would have been the kid that they put on the piano and the kid would have started playing and they would have been like, who taught this kid? At a very young age, I was 10 years old when I saw in the Detroit News that you could write away for an astrology read. I mean, I didn't even know what it was, and I could hardly even I didn't even know how to do the thing where you fill it in and put the stamp on the envelope. I was that little. And then when the chart came, it was the wrong birth date. I guess I'd put the wrong birth date in. So it was very disappointing, but I have this vivid memory of looking in the mail. So it was clearly in my unconscious, in my awareness at a very young age. And then fast forward, I was as young as 20 when I started my fascination and became a professional astrologer, literally in my early 20s. And
I loved watching your explanation of that too, just to reflect back to you. There was talking about the piano playing, being a prodigy too. I just like the Gemini hands and just thinking about that for those of you, because they can't see you, but you kind of like did the rundown the piano.
They can't see me. It's just auditory.
Yeah, this is just going to be audio. This is for the podcast.
Oh, good to know. Okay, yes. I was playing piano in air while you guys were listening.
Totally. And so I'm fascinated because that seems so amazing to me that this has been your path and your calling from a really young age. And I'm curious, and we can maybe even start at the root chakra and kind of go up. So talking about the root is like upbringing, family, where you're from, your roots. How did you grow up, and was the environment you were in supportive of this astrology practice?
Absolutely not. So the bottom chakra in my family was terrifyingly scary. I grew up my father was in the Jewish mafia, and he got, ended up going to jail. And so there was a very strong, vivid memory of intense vulnerability that I grew up with. But what's interesting, that's far more interesting than that upbringing. And I am very close to my dad, although he's passed. And I am deeply indebted to his ethics, although I think he was Robin Hood. He stole from the rich and gave to the poor. So while he was a crook and it was very scary, his heart was very, very pure, and gave me the gift of, genuinely gave me the gift of knowing what it is to serve and to work. It sounds so funny that a crook would have taught me that. But so I didn't have the traditional grounding that people would consider, but I came that way. Like I was thinking about this the other day, that while I never got the training, and this is true for anyone listening, if you had a childhood that was so disorienting or so not safe, you become your own source of safety. And it became so important for me that there's many people in my life now that I provide grounding for. So it's through astrology, yes, but it's also through a spiritual evolution that some beings come in and they just have a natural desire to be of service. And therefore I had to learn how to ground because no one was doing it for me. So my first chakra as a child was extremely vulnerable and not safe. I mean, literally the FBI followed my dad around. So, phones were tapped in the good old days. This was in the 70s. And I remember saying to the phone, "You don't want to be on my phone. I'm the kid's phone. You want my dad's phone. Why don't you guys hang up?"
Oh, wow. Yeah. So interesting. Is this something that you connect with karmic lesson as a Gemini? Is this connection to grounding, or is there something else going on in your chart that you connect to these things?
That's very astute. I think every Gemini, every air sign every Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius needs to know how to ground themselves. And so by default, by the opposite of being so ungrounded through my circumstance, I learned how to clean the closets, take care of my taxes, cover all the dishes, make sure I really did have the crossing of the dotting of the I's and the crossing of the T's. Like, I've learned that. So that didn't come naturally. It's a skill set that I had to cultivate because, as a Gemini, I was like all over the place.
Yeah. So you're making me think of, there's a few things that are coming through, but for one, Saturn, I often associate with the root chakra. And since we're down here, I was like looking at your chart and I'm looking at your Saturn, and I see your Saturn is in Sag. A big part of the work that I do as an astrologer is talking about what I like to call soul-centered astrology, which is how do you evolve through your polar sign? So Gemini is evolving through Sagittarius. There's something about this duality that helps to bring us into a centered state. And seeing that you have Saturn in Sagittarius, I'm really curious on a lower end, the obstacles that you might have had around that, but also what you have stepped up to in relationship to commitment and to authority. And I already know that you're a great teacher, and you do it in a very Gemini way. So we've got this Sag Gemini thing going on, but what has it been like? Because I'm Saturn and Sag too. So it's cool to connect with you. And
well, the position of Saturn opposite my sun, that's the criteria. When I teach in my school, there's a law that whenever there's a planet conjunct or opposite the sun, moon, or rising, it's the signature of the whole chart. So I am Saturnian, and I'm aging I'm Benjamin Buttons. Everyone keeps saying that. All the kids I grew up with are always like, why do you look exactly the same? Well, Saturn had her way with me. I devote myself to discipline around food, exercising every day, being very ritual. It's totally anti-Gemini.
yeah.
But I've become very conscious of that Saturnian influence. So that's accurate. And that is the bottom chakra. And I make my practice this life. I did a journey once on one of those wild drugs, and they were very clear to tell me in no uncertain terms that I could only be as high as I was grounded. So I am a time worshiper, and I respect the physical form. It didn't come this way. But right. Saturn has been my best friend. And so I devoted myself to Saturn, and my whole school, everything in my school is based around Saturn.
Wow. And what is the influence of Sag coming in, and how does Sag?
Well, the good news is we get to laugh in the middle of the party. So no matter how miserable I am, there's a sense of humor. No matter how sad I get, I can tickle myself. No matter and I've had so many tests this life, and I always look to find that ridiculous attitude that says, well, who gives a shit? Like, as soon as you turn on Sagittarius, and you take yourself to the high road, no matter what's going on, no matter what, there's some kind of funny flavor that you can insert.
Yeah.
Thank God. I tell everybody, I think I was like, when I designed my chart, I was like, please, can I have Saturn and Sag?
Yeah. It's so on the show, last year we worked on this project called Queen of the Zodiac. And it's where I would take 16 legendary women that are of that sun sign and put them in like this March Madness bracket. And then the listeners of the show would vote who feels more queen of that sign until we had one left. So our queen of Gemini is Stevie Nicks for her ability to communicate deep felt wisdom and doing it in a way that is shape-shifting between light and dark. There's a sense of being ethereal and even innocent, but also expressing dark parts of the soul in an airy and uplifting way. So there is that kind of shape-shifting. I'm curious, how do you connect to this like dual nature as a Gemini? Where does this like light and dark energy come in for you?
I don't think it's dual. I think it's 25 different personalities. I think it's unfair to say two. It's not fair.
Yeah.
If you watch my funny videos that have 7 or 8 million hits, it's because I acted out 12 different personalities, and people watch those videos and they go, oh my God, and there was no producer and there was no director. I just improv. And that is a result of my Gemini. I can change ship. It's not just two. I don't really get that. There's many, many parts of me.
Well, what I'm hearing from you feels like a reflection of mutable air. Is the ability to shape shift and transform into many different airways. That's what I think of with the mutable signs. And when you have it with air, it feels like able to communicate that. And so I love that you're bringing this up, because this is what so many people know and love about you is the interpretations or the acting of each of the 12 astrological signs that you did. I would love to actually play a clip of the Gemini acting on the podcast, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll drop that in right here. And so this clip that you're about to hear, this is from Debra Silverman's YouTube channel, Debra Silverman Astrology, in which she does a zodiac sun sign in action series. So there's like a 5-minute video for each astrological sign, in which Debra then channels the spirit of that astrological sign. And so since we're in Gemini season, and since Debra's a Gemini, I thought we could get a little taste of that by listening to her interpretation of Gemini.
Okay, so Gemini. That's me next. I'm Gemini, right? Yes, okay. Gemini is really interesting because they're always thinking. I think all the time. I lie in bed, I just make stuff up. I love when things go wrong. It's something about that entertains me. As soon as things go a little bit off, I find this whole thing funny. If things go predictable and they're just all normal, it's like everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, I'm like, this is really boring. Being bored is not fun. Because for me, I have to find something to stimulate me so I can keep myself interested, because when I'm interested, then life becomes colorful. Otherwise, I get bored. And when I'm bored, I get pissy. I'm giving you an example. I'm opening up the door. I'm showing you myself. It's not always I do this, because sometimes I don't tell everybody all this, but I'm telling you, check it out. I've got style. I've got real style. I've got a real unique way of doing everything artistically. I've got a great artistic eye. Check it out. However, when it comes to big life decisions, it's a little hard for me. So I call my friend, I call another friend, I call another friend, and I forget what I said. Was I saying that, or did you say that? Whose idea was this anyways? So it's a little bit hard for me to keep track of all the ideas, but I do include lots of people in my world. I'm very social. I got great friends. Oh, people put me at a party, drop me off, poof, and I know everybody. I sit next to this one, I sit next to that one, and I just want to go soon because nobody else is there to talk to. Unless, of course, someone's really intellectually interesting. Now, there you get me. If you can get me going intellectually, I am so interested in you. Oh, you could keep me going, but as soon as I got to the point where I know what you're going to say, because I've heard you say it before, 3 times, please. That's why I love to go home by myself. I can entertain myself for hours. I got little things going on here. I love stamps and stickers and mailing things and getting little things. An email was a great Gemini delight. How to communicate in 3 easy steps. Da-da-da-da, ding, done. Okay. So lots of people. And going on that internet thing where you can go into all those encyclopedias and read all that information. In fact, I love information. That's why I've got 3 magazines, count them. And I don't care what it's about. I can sit and read any magazine at all. It's the colors I get off on. I do commercials on television. You know those like, let me think of some. I'll say them and you'll start to laugh. Like, good, good. Camel's chicken soup is good. Now, why is that in my head? That's a Gemini kind of thing. Rinky-dinky tunes. And I love those kind of things. And I can just come up with them all the time. People think I'm so funny because that's what I remember them. And you do too once I remind you. That's what I like having me around. I've got a great memory. I do. I have incredible memory for all kinds of little tidbits. I've got little quirks. I love that word. Quirks, perks, I'm perky, and I'm quirky. Kids are my favorite thing. Now, you know why I like kids? Kids are fun to play with because they tickle you. They're not caught in all this grown-up bull. Excuse me, should I swear? That's the Gemini kind of thing. Words slip out of our mouth. Oh my. Try not to say those things. So sometimes I get really quiet. I don't talk at all. You know why? No one's listening anyway. I figured it out. So I talk to myself. Put the headset on. I can entertain myself for hours. Look out the window. Who needs people? I got enough inside of my own head. I am not boring. One thing they will not say about me is boring. Did she say emotional? They always ask me that. I've studied that. I've read books about it. There's sadness, there's anger, and there's all kinds of different feelings that I haven't quite had a direct experience of, but I am studying them. I can't do anger yet. Anger is an interesting one. It's something about getting really pissed off, and then I change my mind. See, my whole thing is just change your mind. Don't go there. Who needs to change? Really, I just tell people, don't get yourself all screwed up about that stupid emotional stuff. Just change your mind. But I have had a little problem there because I get stomach aches. It's my only clue. I mean, I get a little confused. I get sometimes emotional, and then my things, I have to eat sugar. I love sugar. It's one of my clues that I'm sort of emotional. But it doesn't really come in a direct experience, if you know what I mean. It's hard for me to feel. I can do emotion. It's just that icky feeling thing where you get really caught in it. And it's like, I get bored. I'm very funny, very witty, entertaining. I've learned over my 16 different relationships to finally get loyal. Love clothes, love design. Love colors. Ooh, I love it. At the end of the story, I figured out loyalty is an important thing. Really, to telephone numbers. I know everybody. I meet people, they like me immediately. Wouldn't you like me? But it's just that people get so boring. I mean, after a certain point, you're going, come on. I love good conversation. When I feel connected to somebody intellectually, can I go for it, baby? I'm not good at pretending, okay? It's either real, you're in my eyes, we're making connection. That's why I'm loyal, when the person's really with me. I can stay in the game with somebody to keep up with me. That very first person, I liked them, that Aries thing. That was really fun. But that last person would drive me out of my mind. We've talked about the trees once too many. I don't really care about whether or not you want to eat chocolate again. Oh, my God. That is not interesting to me. Interesting to me is science, modern physics. Let's talk about Marilyn Monroe. She was a Gemini. Brilliant woman, yes. Every Gemini thinks they're real special. They're not real special. It's predictable. Don't feel bad. It's always true. Geminis think they're so special. Gemini's a little bit nuts. That's the point. Don't be surprised when the Gemini's a little bit nuts. It shouldn't be a surprise. Write that down. Gemini nuts.
When you did this whole series, you did it all in one sitting? Is that right?
It was a period of 2 days. It was in a school class I was teaching. This is how I teach, by the way. Everything's embodied. I can't stand theory. I get bored.
Yeah.
It's not embodied and it's not authentic, and that's how my school is. Why the school that I have is so impactful and people's lives change is it's not, I'm a psychologist as well as an astrologer. So my characterizations in that particular Gemini version was the humor value of my craziness, and the depth of it comes from, how do I come to peace with this part of me? Like that was my quest for all 12 of them. How do I uplift? How do I lift up the energy of these personalities? Because yes, all of them can be, I mean, Gemini is a flake. Gemini is scattered. Gemini doesn't follow through. Gemini doesn't remember what they said. I mean, there's a million things I could say that aren't very nice, but that's not my job.
Yeah. So what does high vibe Gemini look and feel like?
Well, I don't know if you know Alice Bailey's work. Are you aware of her?
Yeah.
She was Gemini. So it's a channel. It's a bamboo shoot. It's the Roman numeral 2 with an empty channel in the middle connecting the heaven and the earth. So they are the access point to let spirit talk through. So I have that gift. I open up the top of my head. I got a big ledge on the top of my head. People don't believe me till they touch it. And it opens. As a Gemini, I am an empty vessel. And the high road is to take off the ego entirely, like Deborah Who, and become the vessel for the mothership. I definitely work for the astrology, the company called Astrology in the Stars. They use me as their favorite person to work through.
Amazing. Yeah. When thinking about that, I'm sensing us going up to the sacral chakra now on our little journey here. And this part of the body, I usually will equate to or connect with Venus. And I just recently have been getting into the esoteric ruling planets. And so the esoteric ruling planet for Gemini is Venus. For me, I sense this is Gemini dropping out of their head into their heart. What's your connection to Venus? Because you've got Venus in Gemini.
I'm just in love with everybody I meet. I feel like a slut. Like, part of me is a cosmic slut. Like every chart I see, I fall in love with. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's Gemini. Like everybody looks, once you get into them, not to start with, I judge people as everyone judges everyone. But when you open up an astrology chart or you study astrology and you go, this is my favorite question. What was God thinking when she made you?
Mm-hmm.
I look at the chart and I go, oh my God, she was in love with fill in the blank.
So I actually had that feeling when I pulled up your chart. I was like, this chart is just so amazing. And I'm looking at it now, and I'm also looking at your transits chart. Today, the sun is at the same degree as your Venus, which is nice. We also have today, Mars is in Cancer at the same degree as Mars in Cancer in your birth chart. What do you sense with like a Mars return? Like, have you noticed anything?
Yes, of course. It's always the same. Every 2 years you have a Mars return. You look on your chart, everyone that's listening, and you go figure out when is it returning. If possible, it's always fertile myrtle. Like I'm starting a new project. So it doesn't surprise me I'm starting a new project because Mars return activates my physical energy, and mine happens to be in Cancer, which is kind of peculiar, but it does create my ability to nurture people. And that's what I'm doing. I'm starting a new project called Stars and Cards. You'd love it.
Stars and Cards? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
It comes out you're getting the early bird view. It comes out in the end of June. It's a combination of an oracle device called the Colette Baron Reed has these cards that she uses. I don't know if you know her work. They're beautiful cards. You'd love to interview her. She works for Hay House, and she has the most highly popular oracle cards there are. So she has these several different decks, probably 8 of them. And so we use the deck in combination with your progressed moon. So if you have a question about what's going on right now, first we teach people how to find just the progressed moon, nothing else.
Right.
Pull it out of one piece of a puzzle, pull one piece off the puzzle, add the cards to it, and you get divinational access to what should I be doing right now. So that's my Mars and Cancer return. I'm just starting Stars and Cards.
How long have you been working with cards? And when you say cards, is it always oracle, or are there like tarot cards coming in with it?
Well, this particular course is specifically built around her oracle cards, but I was trained originally at the very early stage of my career in tarot, which, by the way, is completely steeped in astrology. There's 22 major arcana cards in the tarot. 10 of them are planets and 12 are signs. Yes. They were done in the 15th century. They didn't know about Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus in the 15th century, but they left exactly the right cards.
Yeah, it's quite mystical. They were channeling something for sure.
Well, tarot cards are the deepest calling of the wisdom of consciousness. They tell, I'm doing a whole course, or not course, that's not right, a podcast with someone that is really versed in the tarot, teaching the level of evolution from the beginning card being the Fool, who comes to this planet like a goofball, who wants to incarnate into the human experience, a fool, all the way to the last card, which is the Judgment card. And then at the end of the story, we see, how did you do on this little journey? So yeah, the tarot deck is an astrological access, but we digress because what you wanted to do is follow the chakras. So the short answer is my Mars return brought me to my new project.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to follow the chakras. It was just sort of like an invitation, but in this mutable air energy, I'm happy to always be adapting and changing. And tarot is a really big part of my work and teachings as well. I love using it as a visual component. So when it's Gemini season, I'll create like a little altar and bring all the Gemini cards out and say what's up to them. So I've got some Gemini cards out here today, and I just want to share them with you and see if they bring anything up for you. So one, Queen of Swords. Queens are mutable energy, and swords is air. So we have Queen of Swords here.
I love her.
Yeah. Why? What do you love about the Queen of Swords?
She's just so sovereign. She doesn't require anyone else. She's got the power and the authority as a voice to bring through consciousness. Look at her. She's sitting by herself. There's no king around. There's birds, but she's got that sword. What is more powerful than a woman that has her sword intact?
Mm-hmm. She's the only person in the tarot besides Justice that has a sword pointing straight up towards the sky. Even the King of Swords, it's like slightly tilted towards the side. So there is that link. And there's just one bird, right? It's in some way. But what's fun about the mutable energy is they actually, since there's 16 court cards, the mutables get 2. where the other signs only get one. So the other mutable is Page of Swords. So this is the other side of Gemini. Page of Swords is like new beginnings, new thoughts, new ideas, curiosity. What is your relationship between perhaps these two different sides of yourself as a Gemini?
Well, the page is the youthful part that is constantly in motion. I have that little wiggly, you know how Geminis tap their foot all the time and they're always wiggling and they've got that high strung vibration that can create a little bit of chaos. That is in service to the queen if I take directions from my feminine wisdom, which is something I've learned over this life, to really be in devotion to my feminine side. We're all good. But as soon as I neglect her and just go, haywire, I'm not trustworthy. I change my mind and I change my directions and I forget where I was going and I don't tell the truth. And that's very dangerous. Swords can be very dangerous because the words that we use have so much more potency than people know. And I have Mercury in Taurus, so I've made a practice this lifetime of choosing my words with weight and slowing everything down so I don't talk out of my head. I talk out of my tummy. And that's been a long time practice. So that would be the Page of Swords in service to the queen. We're all good to go. You leave the Page of Swords all by himself and he's just running away.
And we see here all these birds on the page too.
So curious. Yes, he's just the kid. He's that fun part of us. It's like dun 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 dun.
Yeah. We also have Mercury, which is the magician.
Notice what he has on the table. The whole of my body of work is based on that table. The 4 elements. That's my book, The Missing Element. For everyone that's interested, if you want to master without getting too deep into astrology, because not everyone's a double Aquarius like you are, Jeff, then you go figure out the mastery of the 4 elements, and that just take the magician card and stick it on your forehead and practice. Do I have these 4 elements in full breath? Because once you do, manifestation is so easy. Yeah, there you go. He stuck it on his forehead. You guys can't see.
There we go. Doing it for you all. Trying to get it to stick.
You just make it wet. You just got to put a little bit of water in the back of it, stick it on your forehead, and walk through your life. If you could master anything, it would be that magician card. And that is simply, how do I deal with all 4 elements in tandem, not one over the other?
And
that's what my book is about.
That's reminding me of, on your website, your logo has all 4 elements there. It's quite beautiful. Did you create that or did you have an artist create that?
I knew exactly what I want. I'm Libra rising, so my aesthetic is very much part of my existence.
Yes.
I'm a color freak. And I was looking at the other day, Debra Silverman, one of the letters is crooked on Debra. One of the letters is a different color. I do a lot of, which is very Aquarian, not following the symmetrics of anything, not following at all. Geminis, how do you put air in a box? Well, good luck, because it'll sneak out. So my style, my logo, everything is about, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
What you relate to.
Yeah. So I like that you're bringing in the Libra rising. I like to talk about the triple tier is what I like to call it, your sun, moon, rising. And last year around this time, it was during Gemini season, I was studying the great Judy Garland, who is a Gemini herself. And I was really just like taken back at how her sun, moon, and rising was literally a snapshot of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. So curious little girl, Dorothy, Gemini Sun. And there's even this moment where she's like split in the yellow brick road and which way is she going to go? She's very aware of her immediate surroundings. Her moon is in Sagittarius in a far off land. Cancer rising, trying to find her way back home.
Oh.
So I created this little system in a very Virgo moon kind of way that would invite all of us into our inner Dorothy. And so I'd like to share yours with you today. So Debra, you are a curious little girl, Gemini Sun, riding a horse at sunrise, Aries moon, ensuring that the revolution will be peaceful, Libra rising.
That's so beautiful.
When you like sit with that image and also just kind of reflect on your connection to those 3 signs, is there anything that is coming through for you or anything that...
I love that. God, that's so beautiful. Early morning on a horse. It's so true. I am a revolutionist, and my child has led the revolution, which makes me very attractive to millennials and to older people. They all think that I'm their old best friend. I present like someone they all knew. Everyone always says that to me. My whole life, they always say to me, I've met you before. I'm like, no, I'm familiar in that I'm trying to revolutionize your quest for some semblance of balance, or in your words, peace, Libra rising. I'm here to give you comfort, to look so normal. I mean, I present so normal, but I'm really not. So that you will feel so comfortable to come close. And that's my 8th house sun. Like, I don't want to just talk. I want to have a deep connection. I don't want to just be, that's one of my biggest values. What house is the sun in?
Right.
That's single thing when I teach, like, pay attention.
Yeah. You're a Gemini living in a Scorpio world. And you've got this Neptune in Scorpio at the 0 degree in your first house.
And a North Node in Scorpio.
That's right. Yeah.
I love Scorpio. I sleep with one.
Yeah. Well, with North Node in Scorpio, you can also then, I like to kind of tag on the North Node to that story. And so ensuring that the revolution is peaceful, but also transforming darkness into light, because the North Node holds a similar invitation to me as a rising sign does. It's interesting. I had 2 different people write in with a question of Scorpio in relationship to Gemini. I'll just read one of the questions. But this one, someone wrote in and said, why is Gemini-Scorpio such an explosive combination?
Well, because Geminis will not leave unspoken what the Scorpio is trying to avoid. It's irritating to both
Right.
parties. Scorpio's like, really? You're going to come underneath in my drawers and pull all this stuff out? And the Gemini's like, really? You're going to stick all that in your drawers, pull it out.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a conflict because one prides itself on the internal world and the other prides itself on spilling everything on the outside of the world. So,
Right.
But I love that combo.
It makes me think, like, the word secret was just coming through, and Scorpio's like trying to keep it esoteric, occult, and secretive. And Gemini's like, let me share all of this with you. There are no secrets here. This information is for you. Yeah. So it's interesting. How do you balance that in relationship to your life as an astrologer and just as a human here on this planet?
I just talk about sex. I talk about death. I talk about topics nobody wants to talk about. I've been fascinated with death since I was a kid. I've never shied away from people telling me their deepest, darkest addiction. In my practice, I am known to be a crisis therapist. The scariest things happen, and my Gemini goes, come to me.
Neptune in Scorpio at the 0 degree. What is in the first house? And I feel myself just kind of slowing down and like sitting with that and like trying to feel into that.
I love that part of my chart.
I think a first house is like things that I often will invite people to do in the morning as a ritual, like connect with that planet in the morning. Do you have like a spiritual practice in the morning, or could you share us a little bit about how Neptune and Scorpio might manifest for you at that time?
I am obsessed with smells. Welcome to Neptune. So I have every day of my life, I'm burning incense, burning candles, the first thing I do in the morning. And that's been a ritual I've had forever, like a temple keeper. So I know that in order to keep me on this planet, because I don't like it here, I had to figure out what would be my payoff. Like, what can I do to make this place delicious? Oh, that's right. There's yum factors, from smells to taste to sex to kissing so I make my practice. I start every day. I do yoga every day. So I make my practice to be deliciously in my body. And that includes these wonderful, I am obsessed with smells.
Mm-hmm. And how grounding for your Gemini sun too.
Back to Saturn. So I made it a ritual. So I do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing, I think millennials, what you guys want to know is, this is what kept me young and what has, because I don't really identify with being in my 60s. At the mental level, I identify it with my physical, is that at a very young age, I figured this out. If I ritualistically do things I love, for example, every morning starting with lemon water, every morning making my yoga, every morning doing my spiritual practice of the incense, the candles, the music, Trevor Hall. Do you know Trevor Hall's music?
No.
Oh, Jeff, write this down. He's 31 years old. He's got Saturn and Sagittarius. his music is going to send you into heaven every single day. He lived for 7 years in an ashram. He's your age, but he became a musician and is created. I listen to him like a broken record. He's chanting. Secrets are out because he now lives in the city I live in, and we live down the street. But the secret's out that he was an old wise being who dressed up as a rock star in a modern day world. So I make a practice of these things. Trevor Hall, the incense, I burn cedar wood there's a Guru Mai company called Blue Pearl, this incense. I've been using Blue Pearl cedar wood incense for hundreds of years. These are the things and you find your smell. That's mine. It smells like chocolate chip cookies. But I have to have a Gemini twist to it. It can't be heavy. Trevor's not heavy. I can't do anything that's not fun, but they're ritual and they're constant. And I've disciplined myself, and that's created my success.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. And I have noticed that you said millennials a few times, and I often will look to the planet Pluto to reflect on generations, and you're Pluto in Leo, and you got Uranus in Leo, and also according to this calculation, your part of fortune is in Leo too. So you have kind of this little stellium, although they're split between 10th and 11th house. What do you love about being a Pluto and Leo generation?
I don't know that I love being a Pluto and Leo. It's a little sad to me that my generation's been so ego-centered and didn't consider the future and got so captured by their own prestige status, their own visuals, how they look, and all the Botox and all the stuff. It makes me kind of sad.
Yeah.
But what I love about my Leo energy is those videos that hit 7-8 million 1 month. College Candy put those videos on, and we had 1 million views in a month.
Wow.
That was all young people watching it. That's my Leo. I can entertain people with a Plutonian purpose.
Yes. Oh, wow. That's really profound. And it's so nice to see that reflected in your chart. And because I know for me, I'm doing a lot of healing with my parents who are Pluto and Leo for some of the things that you had mentioned. So it's so heartwarming in that Leo way to feel into the warmth that you inspire. When I watch your videos, there's always a sense of feeling super connected in that very Leo lion kind of way. There's also this you have a very regal presence when you're doing it, even though it's also in this Gemini playful way. And it's very inspiring to me. So I just wanted to reflect that back. I want
to apologize for my generation. I feel like we neglected you, and that there's been a real almost an incredible downside to what's occurred on the planet because of my generation not thinking about the future.
Yeah.
I really feel bad about that. I have children, and I often hear myself say, I'm so sorry. And I'm trying to make up for it with all my friends and all the people in my generation. We missed the boat. We did not think about the plastics. We did not think about the abuse of water. We did not think about what would happen with us flying around and using our prestige and our status and indulging ourselves. It's really had a dire consequence. And it was our generation that overindulged with no regard for anyone.
Yeah. Well, I do know that the high side of what I sense from Pluto and Leo generation is that there was a sense of enjoyment of life that was nurtured for me, especially as a kid, building of camaraderie, a sense of belonging in some way. So I like to think of both sides of it, but Pluto is the deep psychological healings and the things that we're going into the underworld with. So we're coming close to the end of our time together here. And we do this thing on the show called Cosmic Slip and Slide. And so what it is, it's a 60-second game where I ask you as many questions about Gemini, your personal connection to Gemini, as you can answer in those 60 seconds. And so I was curious if you're up for the slip and slide challenge.
I'm up for it. I wanted to hear all the questions your people sent in, but I'm going to go with this. I love it. The slip and slide.
Okay. So
my dream, slip and slide. I want to go immediately. Let's go.
Well, I will say that the one person that is answered the most questions in a minute was Colin Bedell of Queer Cosmos last year, who is a Gemini. So this is a very good Gemini game. He is currently in first place with, I think, 12 in a minute. So I'm going to pull up the stopwatch. We have 60 seconds on the clock. And so we'll start Now, what crystal do you associate with Gemini?
I'd say labradorite, or the blue one. What's that called? That really blue?
Lapis?
Lapis.
Yes. If Gemini were a sound, what would it sound like?
A whistle.
Who's the most influential Gemini in your life?
I would say Trump.
What astrological sign does Gemini find most attractive?
Scorpio.
If Gemini were a place in nature, where would Gemini be?
In the clouds.
What's a Gemini's favorite food?
Small bird food. Sunflower seeds.
What does a Gemini think about most?
Everything.
What color do you associate with Gemini?
All rainbows.
What animal do you associate with Gemini?
Bugs.
Who is Gemini most likely to ask for advice?
Capricorn.
Boom, and we're right at time. I'll have to go back and count them, but it was nice because you were answering them quick, but it was also, I felt your Mercury in Taurus. There was like a steadiness to it too, but it was...
What animal? I said a bug.
Why did you say a bug?
Because Geminis just get bugged all the time. Everything bugs them.
Yeah. You also said, was it a rainbow?
Yeah.
I love that.
Geminis don't want to pick one color.
Also makes me think of Dorothy again, that Gemini energy.
Dorothy is my alter ego.
Yeah.
I have a whole story about her seeking evolution and consciousness by the three parts of her having to connect her mind, her heart, and her spirit with those three beings and just figure out how she could realize there's nowhere to go. It was all right at home.
And you also said Gemini would be a whistle.
Because they're always bringing everybody together. Come on over here.
I love that. I also think about Gemini and its connection to the neighborhood and like walking around the neighborhood and,
come here.
you know, and I think I'm going to walk around and whistle today. I feel inspired. It has been such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. And we all look up to you so much. And thank you for continuing to devote yourself and in the way that you do to the astrology community. And just a deep bow to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. What an honor it is to be here each new and full moon for you here in season 6, cousins. Thank you for tuning into the show. I hope you enjoy the rest of this Gemini season. We switch into the cardinal water sign of Cancer on June 21st. This is this coming Friday, the summer solstice on the northern hemisphere, the longest day of the year. And then we tip into the other side of the year, which feels quite appropriate with this nostalgic, reflective energy of Cancer. And so until next time I see you, it'll be the Cancer new moon eclipse season. So we have that to look forward to. Until then, remember, bring your awareness to your bodies and your breath. If you'd like to connect with me, if you need support through an astrology reading, astrologycousins.com. And I'll see you next time. Take sweet care, cousins. And remember, deep breaths.